So the two sources that you will be learning about HTML this week from are W3 Schools, which is a great website that's very complete. It's got a lot of useful information in it, and your textbook. So I kind of wanted to go briefly over the W3 Schools, which is kind of maybe a new site for some of you guys, and then I wanted to talk about some of the basic HTML tags that you're going to be learning this week, and just talk a little bit about that. And give you a little primer to see if it helps you better understand your reading and the W3 schools. But if you come in this week, you'll notice that the first preparation assignment is to visit W3 schools and to do the basic section. The HTML basic section, starting from the HTML editor section all the way to the HTML XHTML section. And by clicking on this link here, it's going to take you straight to the HTML editor section, right? If you notice over here, here's your navigation, right? We're in the editor section. It's bold. That means that's where we are. And we want you to read all the way down through to XHTML and try to get a good summary knowledge of all the things in here. The stuff in the book is the stuff that we're going to be using the most throughout the semester, but all of this stuff, the more you learn about the rest of this stuff, the better prepared you are to make some fun websites throughout the rest of the semester. So I just wanted to show you one quick aspect of W3 schools that is kind of neat. If you go into the basics section here, there's this try it yourself section, or this try it yourself button, which is a really neat tool that I encourage you to explore and to understand. In this particular lesson, you're learning about HTML headings, which are delimited by an H1 through an H6. So heading 1, heading 2, heading 3, heading 4 are different levels of headings, similar to the headings that you find inside of HTML. Excuse me, some of the headings, the formatting options that you find inside of Word, for example, have various leveled headings. And as you're learning about a different piece of code, whether it's HTML or next week when you're learning about some JavaScript, and you want to play with it a little bit, this try it yourself button is really great because it'll pull it up. It'll have a snippet of code over here that represents the things you're learning. Here's the H1 through H6 tags. And then over here it shows you the result of what's going on. And so you can play with the code over here and hit submit code and see what happens over here. For example, I can change the text in here. I can change, make both of these an H1 just to see. I can add an H1 at the bottom. Just change the code and just kind of explore it to see what happens. And once you've played with it, you want to see the changes that you've made, you hit submit code, and it'll render over here the things that you've done. So that's a fun way to explore the single element that you're learning inside of W3 schools so that you can kind of get a better idea of what it is you're learning there. So there's that. I'll leave you to explore W3 schools on your own, but I do want to give you a quick lesson on HTML in general. Basically going to be reiterating some of the parts out of the book. Everything I'm going to be sharing today can be found either in the book or W3 schools. So before we move on, I just want to kind of explore this code a little bit that I've got over here, because what we have over here, and I'm going to delete this stuff out that we added, is kind of the basic structure, the basic HTML structure. And I would recommend creating something very similar to what I have here and saving it as kind of a template so that when you start new assignments, you can bring this up and you've got your structure ready to go. The structure is comprised, or HTML itself is basically a formatting language similar to, you can think of it a little bit like Microsoft Word, where you put a bunch of text on a page and then you've got these formatting buttons up at the top that you highlight different parts of the page, and you can make some bold, you can make some a header, you can make some move to the right a little bit, some move to the left a little bit, left justified, right justified, and you do it all with the buttons and highlighting. Inside HTML, you do it with what are called tags. And most tags are formatting tags, but you do have some structural tags that we're going to talk about first. We set up the structure of the page. Now, the first tag that you have is called the Doctype. And for our purposes, we will be using this specific Doctype. It basically is kind of like the version of HTML that we're doing. And this Doctype here is called HTML5, and that's the type of HTML I want you guys to write this semester. Uh, the very next tag is basically just an HTML tag, and this is because these files are just plain text. There's nothing in there that's fancy that tells anything what it is. We start the document out with saying, here's where my HTML is going to live. And you notice inside Notepad++, it's really nice. Whenever I click on an opening tag, it highlights the closing tag so that you can see everything in between. And so what you're seeing here is that this HTML tag, all the HTML I'm going to write is going to live inside these opening and closing HTML tags. So that's the first or the second tag. And you can have different properties associated with it. In this case, we have a language property where we're basically saying this is United States English is what we're doing this thing in. And then inside your HTML, you have two main sections. You have the head, which is where you put a lot of data about the document, about this HTML. A character set, we don't need to go into what that means. I've got some comments in here. And I've got a title, which, as you noticed in some of the things that I did before, was the title was the name of the file, the name of my page that showed up in the tab when I brought it over into Chrome in the previous screencast. So you can do the title of the page, you can do different meta tags, you can do an author tag. So it's kind of stuff about the document. It's not the actual document itself. It's stuff about the document, usually that you put in the head that gets you up and running to put in there. You'll find next week too that we put the JavaScript often inside the head. And then you have the body, and the body is where you put basically your document, your page, the things that you want people to see. You put it all into the body. So that's just a good generic rule of thumb. So just talk a little bit about tags. Like I said, tags are used for formatting. You'll also notice, I probably ought to explain this now, these strange arrows that show up inside my Notepad++. You may not see these. These are symbols that I've turned on where I want to show tabs and white spaces. And it just helps me keep my stuff formatting. And you can see when I use tabs versus when I use spaces, the spaces show up as little dots. The tabs show up as arrows. I like to I like to indent my code because I think it makes it easier to read. So my head, you can see each level as you go through. This is the top level, the second level, the third level, and I tab in so that you can kind of see those things. Something I recommend you doing. The code will work whether you do this or not. It just makes it, in my opinion, easier to read. Okay, so let's go right into our tags. And inside the body section, oftentimes you're going to, you know, like you're writing any type of a Word document, you might want to give it a title. So my assignment, right? And I put that in there, but you can use formatting. You say, I want this to be a header, and we're going to give this one an H1, right, which is going to make it nice and big, and I'm going to add a closing tag on that. So that knows where this header, it tells the browser that I want the header to start here and end here, and everything in between is seen as a header. And maybe I want to do a subtitle, and we'll do an H2 saying Week 2. Right? And then you do your closing tag. And the closing tags always start with this /. You notice that even though these are all on the same page, Notepad++, or excuse me, all in the same line, Notepad++ is doing all these neat highlighting so I can easily see my opening and closing tags. Maybe that's too big, and I said, you know what, I want to do an H3 instead and make it a little smaller, right? You can do whatever you want. And so that's kind of the header tags. You can use the different levels of headers to get different types of titles in your page, or different types of section headers, or different things like that, right? The other tag you're going to learn about this week is called a paragraph tag. And a paragraph tag, I'm just going to do the opening and closing, is basically just that. Anything I put in here will be treated similar as a paragraph is treated in Word, where it's got a space before it and a space below it, but everything inside of this will be kind of treated as a paragraph. So this is some text, period. I don't have a whole lot of stuff to put in there, but basically you know that it'll be a block of text inside the paragraph that you can put in there. Another element that we're going to talk about, or we're going to use a lot, that you need to know is called a div tag. Now the div tag is kind of tricky because it's not really formatting, it's more like a container. that I can put stuff in, and that'll become more important to us as we talk later. But it's basically an empty container that we can fill stuff up. I could technically, now you won't see it do anything, but all this stuff I've created I could put inside a div, and you notice it makes no difference over here. But it's important to know about the div tag because we will be using them later, and it's important for the interaction between your HTML and your JavaScript. So there's that. We've got attributes. So inside of your tags, we have different attributes similar to this one up here, this language and character set. All tags have a basic set of attributes. And let's go ahead and end the screencast on attributes, and we'll start a second one so that we can break these up into two sections and talk a little bit more about attributes in the next section.